People are getting wood ticks and ants and stuff. Order, please. Order, please. Thank you. This is the Planning Commission for Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 at 6 o'clock. We are coming to order. If you would rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. We'll do a quick roll call. District 1.
Jason Wienerman here.
District 2 is Dave Bentroot. He is not with us this evening. District 3.
Jason Crone, I'm here.
District 4 is me, Sean Blackburn. I am the chair. District 5.
Jacob Hawk, I'm here.
At large. Thank you. Our other at-large member, Tara Ossendorf, is not with us this evening. And our ex officio,
Joe Persky.
Thank you, Joe. All righty, our first item this evening is to consider a conditional use permit. Request submitted by Hendricks Sand and Gravel, Incorporated of Kimball, Minnesota. According to sections 4.8, 6.18, and 9.3.5 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. The request is to operate a contractor's yard in the Agricultural 40 zoning district. The property is part of the southeast quarter lying west of State Highway 15 in Section 10 of Main Prairie Township. The property address is 12037 State Highway 15 in Kimball. Let's see. Go ahead and have a seat there.
Yeah.
Turn on your microphone.
There you go. You can be more relaxed now.
Yeah.
You want me to talk
Okay,
or wait?
just give me a moment.
Okay.
We'll be with you. We're going to do a quick roll call of members who visited the site. Jason?
I did not.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
And Joe?
Yes, I did.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. Let's get to the staff report then, if we could.
Okay. So as you mentioned, the request is to operate a contractor's yard in the Ag 40 zoning district. This property is owned by Hendricks Sand and Gravel, and they got an interim use permit from the township back in 2019 and again in 2020 for their gravel pit that's out there. And then they proceeded to get a construction permit from the township to build the shed. And since they're going to be operating their business out of the site, it becomes a contractor's yard. So that requires a conditional use permit in the Ag district. Since they started the project prior to obtaining the CUP, we do have a compliance agreement with them. So they can, it's outlined the dates they have to get everything completed by in that compliance agreement. So on the site, if you were out there, you saw the shed's already built, and they've got a really nice berm on the south side of the driveway entrance to screen that outdoor storage. And then they're going to also build a berm on the north side of the driveway entrance where the block retaining wall is right now. That wall will come out. They'll put a berm there with some trees on top to screen that real nice from the highway. Okay, as far as wetlands go, there was a determination done back when they bought the property in 2019. There's wetland in the northeast corner. There is some material that's been put in the wetlands, so Hendricks are aware of that. They're going to pull that out of the wetland this summer. The stormwater plan was drafted. That's in your packet, and that was approved. There will be an infiltration pond or basin to the west of the building. And then, so that's approved, and we'll just need the financial guarantee submitted to ensure that gets put in properly. Septic system was installed last fall. It's on the north side of the building. The property has existing access from Highway 15. We did talk with MnDOT today and learned that a right-hand turn lane needs to go in there, so they'll be installing that this summer. And setbacks are met. Parking, there's plenty of space for parking. We already talked about outdoor storage and screening. That'll be completed. They have 5 employees, but no more than 4 will be on site on a regular basis. That's the limitation for a contractor's yard in the ag district. And then for vehicles, no more than 20 licensed vehicles are allowed. They currently have 17. The accessibility code is required to be met, so our building inspector that we work with was out there and reviewed it, and that's done and in compliance. And as you know, as if you were out there, it's right south of the city of Kimball. So the surrounding land uses are a bit of a mixture of residential, ag, the cities nearby. So as far as conditions we would recommend, if it's approved, number 1 would be stormwater management, installing or implementing the plan by June 15th, submitting a financial guarantee by May 15th. Then before we'd release that money back, we require the engineer to go back out and then verify it was put in properly, provide us an as-built drawing. And the stormwater pond has to be maintained in perpetuity. And then no additional impervious surfaces shall be added that aren't accounted for unless they modify their plan and get that approved. Signage, 1 sign is allowed, meeting the standards of the ordinance. Screening we talked about, and so that would need to be installed. We're proposing by October 1st to get that berm in on the north side of the driveway. Also requiring a financial guarantee to ensure the berm gets put in for that. And then also stating in the conditions that no more than 4 employees may be engaged in the conduct of the contractor's yard at any one time. That doesn't include employees who are on site only to pick up and drop off equipment. And then vehicles, there may be the max of 20 commercially licensed motor vehicles, including trucks and trailers. That's all I have for the staff report.
All right, thank you. Now, introduce yourself, please, your name and address.
Joe Hendricks, my home address,
Please.
6505 Hidden Lane, South Haven, Stearns County, Minnesota.
Do you have anything to add?
Unless you guys got questions. Our plan is, right now, you guys drove by, so you probably could see it's a muddy hole. We got material crushed we were gonna put down last fall, so that didn't happen, but because we didn't know all this was gonna happen, well, we decided we had to wait till obviously for the stormwater management plan. So we're hoping to get working on that like next week to get our mud issue resolved. As far as the turn lane goes, yeah, I talked to MnDOT today. Originally, we were waiting for well, I don't know, it's a long story, but we were hoping they were gonna pave in front of our place. Well, they started half a mile south one year, and then the next year they started a quarter mile north, so.
Ouch.
Thought I was kidding him, and he said, well, geez, you're right, but regardless, so we gotta put that in. That's okay, it's gonna be better for us anyways, so, yeah, the plan is to follow the stormwater plan, and some of them storage trailers, basically what it is we're the 4th generation taken over from the 3rd generation, right? So we've been cleaning up stuff from our old location, but some of them storage trailers to the south we're hoping to get rid of sooner than later too, of stuff, just junk, but you know, all the stuff that has been accrued. But yeah, we're hoping to get it cleaned up. Our vehicles, we got like some graders plugged in there by the highway and stuff, but we had power there. We weren't able to, we want to trench in a place where we can plug our equipment in that hole, you know, on the south side and hide everything. Our goal is to not be able to see anything from the road. That was the goal from day one. But we're busy too, so it takes a while.
All right, thank you. Commission members, questions?
Question for staff. So I know the business is limited to having 4 people working on site. Is that due to the septic or some other state requirement?
Sure, yeah, good question. That was the standard that was put in place when contractors' yards were added to the ordinance maybe 10 years ago or so. we had started to see a request for these in the ag district, so it wasn't something originally in the ordinance. So the reasoning behind it was to say, yeah, the contractors can have a business in the country on ag land, but limit the size. So if you're going to get too big, it should probably go in a city or in a commercial or industrial zone. So the enormous ones, the thought was shouldn't be out in the ag zones, but the smaller ones were fine.
Okay, so in the future, if they were to grow, because that's just one thing, you got a business in the ag zoning district, if they were to grow, would they need to do a variance to have more than 4 people?
I suppose that would be an option. I hadn't thought of that. Another option would be to request a rezoning, to change the zoning to
Or rezoning,
industrial, and
yeah.
then there wouldn't
Okay.
be the limit.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Jason, I had the same question. Just to expand it just a little bit, what about resale on this? What does that do with the conditional use permit?
Yeah, Commissioner Persky, the conditional use permit goes with the land.
Okay.
So if it's sold and a new owner wants to do the same business, they can. If they want to alter it or have any different type of business, they would need to come back before us.
So, a question for staff. So, the business would have to stay gravel, sand and gravel, right?
It would have to stay a contractor's yard. Maybe Angie can help me if they were to switch, because we've had, 2 months ago, we had a contractor's yard before you for a well drilling company. Next month, you're going to have another one for a different type of company. So if it's still a contractor's yard, but a different type of company, that would be okay, yeah.
Another question for the staff. So because this is a sand and gravel business at the moment, we have aggregate resource policies, and I'm looking at policy number 3, which talks about adopting regulations to minimize nuisances from ag extraction that affect developed areas that ensure restoration of extraction sites to protect other natural resources and functions. Would that sort of potentially be a supporting factor here, where we have a sand and gravel company locating a site away from development?
I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jason, because it's one of the things that I was actually looking for, different comprehensive plan goals, and there's the one about preserving the county's aggregate resources, or I'm sorry, utilizing them. And I couldn't find it within these business goals, but this business supports that as well. So there's multiple thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a question for the applicant, not knowing, I'm not a sand and gravel miner operator. How far are you traveling from the yard to sites? Are you all over the region? Are you sort of 30 miles?
6, 7 miles. Any further than that, we're not being very efficient anymore. There's a lot of gravel pits.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much.
That's a guess, but
Yeah, that's good.
Anyone else? Any correspondence or?
I was going to bring up, I don't know if it's an issue or anything, it's just that when we were driving around the building site, there's a fuel barrel in I'm going to call it another building or adjacent.
there's a
to-
storage trailer.
Storage trailer?
Yeah. Well, we're not hoping, the plan is to replace that with they make what that is, but there's a manufactured one.
Mhm.
That's the plan. But that's what we had to work with to get our fuel from the old location. We had to do it in a hurry.
Sure.
Priorities got switched around when these guys called us, so.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know what all the regulations are in regards to having your own fuel on site and,
Well,
and all of that kind of
it's
stuff.
under
but
the threshold where so if we buy the self-contained one, we're good to go with the EPA.
Yeah,
So
okay,
that's the plan,
so
It's
in the works.
Yeah, it's very much in the works, because what we have now isn't really that great.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's sheltered and everything, and
Well, we
Yeah,
didn't
we-
want
we
it
were
sitting
worried about-
outside where
Right.
somebody could mess with it or something could happen. So we shoved everything in that trailer. Land Lakes is right up the road. They helped us,
Sure.
you know. And he said, you're good to go. It just don't look pretty, but we hit it in the back and yeah. But our goal is to not have stuff like that and
Yeah.
get with the 21st century. But right now, we got to make you guys happy.
Okay, so was there anyone from the public who needed to address this issue, make a statement, or any correspondence we need to?
There's no written correspondence.
Oh, nothing? All
Seeing no
right.
one coming up, I'll make a motion, we close public hearing.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Further discussion?
Well, I had a lot of concerns about the access coming in and not having a right turn lane, but that sure took care of it today, so that's great.
Our
All right.
plan was to lay in the weeds till they paved the road.
Yeah.
The guy from MnDOT, I think Dave, that retired now, Keith, but
Yep.
it ain't gonna happen, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So then, I mean, you're in the contracting work, are you gonna do any of that work yourself, or can you do any of that work yourself?
Yeah, we can do everything but the paving,
Okay,
yeah.
so good. And then I would hope then in the report, I don't know where it goes, other comments that it'll be brought up to MnDOT specs and.
They have to inspect it before every lift and, yeah.
Okay, no, and as Commissioner Blankish said, that was a concern when we were out there, and I'm glad we're taking care of it.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We'll go to the findings of the facts then.
I do have one question, sorry, before we move on. Did you guys know some of the gravel pits have a trucks hauling sign that you flip down for safety? Is that gotta be in with this stuff if we get it, or does that just MnDOT worries about that?
Yeah, good question. That would, typically that's a permit on the gravel, a condition on the gravel pit permit. So I don't know if the township added that as a condition on
No,
your,
it's not in there.
okay. It would definitely be a good practice. In fact, the ordinance requires that truck hauling signs when you're actively mining out of the pit. For-
Requires the trucks hauling.
Yeah, truck hauling signs for mining. We didn't permit the mining, but the ordinance does require the truck hauling signs, yeah, when you're mining,
I've seen some have them and some don't, and
yeah.
our pit's relatively slow most of the time, but in the spring when we do township work, everybody gets in a truck and hauls, and it'd be awesome to have those signs to put down, but
Yeah, and
I don't know, if I asked MnDOT and he gave us some, then I gotta come back to you, or is
No.
that?
no, just
Okay.
put them up, yeah,
That was my question, I
yeah,
guess.
definitely.
If we can, if they don't care.
No, we would definitely, I mean, the ordinance does require it, the township obviously didn't require it with their permit, but yeah, they should be up, so
Okay.
work with MnDOT, and yeah, that's a
Thank you.
good call.
Thank
Chair?
you.
Yeah, and I would recommend do that just for liability's sake.
Right.
If you come into a situation where there is an accident or
I
something
had
have
no
to
idea
happen.
there was a
Yeah.
county ordinance for it. A lot of pits don't have them, but a lot of pits aren't on the highway either, you know, so.
All right, thank you. Findings of fact. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is under Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439, section 4.8, 6.18, and 9.3.5.
Thank you. Does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections, please.
Mr. Chair, Jason Wienerman, I'll start with aggregate resource policies number 3, which is adopt regulations to minimize nuisances from aggregate extraction that affect developed areas and that ensure restoration of extraction sites to protect other natural resources and natural functions. And there are others.
There are others too under rural business policies, but Jason's is a good one, so we'll stick with that.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Number 3, is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe it is. It's an outbuilding in a general rural area. There's other barns, there's other sheds, there's other structures, within miles of that stretch of highway, so.
Thank you, Jason. I agree. Number 4, how has the applicant demonstrated that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, Jason Wienerman, we have the 5 conditions that will ensure the ordinance conditions are satisfied.
And I think honestly, from the testimony of the owner as well, that proves he's more than willing to do these things and going above and beyond. That's really something that we can be pretty certain of, so.
Thank you, thank you. All righty, and are we looking at any other issues pertinent to this matter?
Yeah, I think it's pertinent to this, there's going to be a right turn lane going in on the state highway, and the work was done with MnDOT on that, and there's also township permits for this as well that have been squared away, so everything else outside of the CUP should be in line.
All right, thank you, Jason. And I expect a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval with the 5 conditions.
I'll second that.
Jason Crone make a motion, Richard Blankish has seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you for your business, yeah.
On to number 2. Number 2 is to consider a conditional use permit request for a major shoreland alteration submitted by Nathan Lahr and Joe Lahr of Rice, Minnesota, according to sections 10.2.14D and 10.2.14I of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. The request includes topographic alteration greater than 100 cubic yards within twice the building setback and retaining walls less than 4 feet in cumulative height on Lot 7, Riverview Park in Section 28 of Brockway Township. The property address is 39886 Ulster Road 1, Rice, Minnesota. Staff report, please.
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is on a property just over half an acre in size. The topography, there is a steep slope as you get closer to the backwater and the river. The soils have very limited erosion potential out here. The area was seeded, but very little ground cover exists currently in the area that was disturbed. On the site, there is mapped floodplain and floodway on most of the lot. The structure was required to meet minimum elevation requirements, and the structure does meet that. That was certified. The septic system on the property was installed in August of last year, and that's all fine. R1 zoning district, it is the Mississippi River ag classification, 100-foot building setback. Kind of looking at the history here, June of last year, the construction and septic permits were issued. The construction site permit was amended to modify the size of the house a little bit. And then in December, we went out for reinspection and showed that there was unpermitted walls and fill. And then we did a site visit regarding that issue on December 19th. So essentially, there's more than 100 cubic yards of material that was moved beyond 20 feet from the proposed structure. Everything within 20 feet is allowed as part of the construction permit. There was about 300 cubic yards of excavation and fill. And because that extended out beyond the 20 feet, that's why it's in front of you here tonight. The retaining walls, there are 2 retaining walls. Part of that was done to support some of the fill that was needed to elevate the structure and the 15 feet beyond the structure to meet floodplain requirements. And the retaining walls, as constructed, are fine and could be authorized by a minor shoreland permit. There's 2 recommended conditions here if this was granted. The first one being a financial guarantee in the amount of 125% of the estimated cost for the completion of a native plant buffer as proposed and outlined in the packet here. The financial guarantee shall be submitted to Stearns County by April 1st, and it would be released once the vegetative cover exceeds 70%. And then the second condition would be that the native plant buffer would be in the shore impact zone and cover a minimum of 3,000 square feet planted by October 1st, and then we would do follow-up inspections every 2 years for until 2027 to ensure that it's maintained and established appropriately to get that 70% or greater cover. There was no correspondence on the item that I received. That's all that I have.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
can you be sure to ask who visited the site?
I was just going to do that. And members who visited the site, Jason?
Nope.
Jason?
Yes.
I did. Jake?
I did.
Rich?
I did.
And Joe?
Yes, I was there.
All right, thank you. Okay, applicant introductions, please, your names and address.
My name's Nathan Lahr. My address is 39886 Ulster Road, Bryce, Minnesota.
And I'm Joseph Lahr, I'm his dad, and my address is 1229 Pinecone Road.
All right, thank you. Commission questions, comments for staff or applicant? Go ahead, Joe.
You know, this is an after the fact. And so we're not too, and I'm in particularly not too keen on after the fact process. So, Nick, I just want to know, as far as, you know, the impact of the work that was done and the requiring of the permit, do you see that any way that it's any more negative from the time before the permit to what we're looking at now, as far as the impact, for example, of the vegetation or the water quality or runoff? Can you respond to some of that?
Sure. So to that point, so beforehand, I mean, it was a gentle slope, essentially from where the building was all the way to the river. You know, previously, the only difference now is that flatter elevation is maintained a little further out from the building before it starts dropping off. In terms of like stormwater issues, there's not really any new concerns with the way it's been constructed. And you may have noticed if you were out there too, they did plan for some of that water management already in the landscaping around the tree it's kind of the northeast side of the building between the structure and the water. So there's really no erosion or stormwater issues that are, you know, aggravated by this necessarily. And then, you know, in terms of the vegetation, again, there was, you know, some disturbance as happens with construction, but then that's where that native vegetation planting condition requirement addresses, you know, some of that aspect. So, you know, that's kind of how it's changed, you know, from pre to post construction. So.
But actually, no really negative impact from the work that was done. There will be no more runoff into the river at all from this process.
No, not really. And even in regards to the impervious surface, you know, obviously with the structure and the driveway, because it is not a steep slope in that area, it's not going to generate a lot of energy that's going to run off in any directed fashion, causing problems closer to the river. So.
And the wall is not linear to the river, so I mean, it's not an optics issue at all.
Correct. That's one of the reasons why it would fall under a minor permit instead of a major permit for those.
Okay. Mr. Chair, question for both, maybe the applicant and staff. I saw some comments to it. It also seemed, just by looking at the site, the grade isn't substantially different than the neighboring properties. And some of that, I think there was a comment in there that some soil may have been robbed from that area for past construction. Is that a fair and accurate statement based on your observations?
Yeah, there was obviously some historical work done there years ago, and as you indicated, it's not substantially different than the neighboring parcels, so it doesn't stand out, you know, in any meaningful way in that regard, in terms of topography or anything.
I guess follow-up question. With the native plant, are you guys good with the native planting recommendation as part of the shoreline?
Absolutely, yeah. It was actually our request that we would plant it, we'd have Natural Resources Company put the wildflowers and stuff in. Yeah. Nathan wanted to maintain, and by the way, I'm speaking for Nathan because I'm kind of the guy who did everything.
No, good.
So anyways, we hired the Natural Resources guy, and that was our intention from the beginning, is to make it look good from the river, and of course preserve the runoff. if you'll notice that picture you had before, it had a brown and green area, the upland
So,
and
yeah.
the shoreland distinction. There you go.
Yep.
So from right between the green and the brown, there was a ridge there that actually existed. And this lot became quite a challenge right from the beginning, because from that transition from the green to the brown, it was like a big fishbowl going toward the to the left toward the Ulster Road. So somebody obviously robbed material out of this site to build the original development when that, before we were around, I guess. But and the other challenge is that we had to have 15 feet on either side of the building, or on both sides of the building. And the property line is like 17 feet. And so that was the purpose of the retaining wall, is to provide a 15-foot place for ingress, egress on both sides of the building. And so what I did, and I'm well aware, I just got recertified to shoreland, so I've been to a lot of classes over the years. And so I'm well aware of how and what needs to be done to protect the environment. And in this case, I had a tree expert come and make recommendations as to how we could save the trees, save the environment, control the runoff. So what we did was that circle in the brown, there's an existing oak tree there. And if you guys were there and noticed, the base of that oak tree is where the existing soils were. And so it sloped from the green-brown transition down to the road. In fact, the road was probably 4.5 feet lower that the grade was at the road. And under the house and garage, there's probably about 6 feet of fill. So 297 yards sounds like a lot, but there's many more hundreds of yards that house sits on, just because we had to fill in that gravel pit, so to speak. And so what we did in addition to that, and maybe some of you don't know, but not only did we intend to collect the water around that tree, but on both perimeter, or on both property lines, on the north and the south, I had a tree guy there, and we didn't want to wreck the trees. I mean, they're pretty majestic pines, even though they're grandpas, they're on their way out, but they may last 15 years or so yet. So what he recommended is that the lawn was mowed almost into the garage, where the garage is on the north side. And so we took and put rock down on top of the mowed lawn so we wouldn't disturb the roots from the existing. And then we built a retaining wall first before we did anything but the foundation. So we have a restricted access because of the 15 feet. And we had an elevation issue also because of the low lot. And so we put rock down, put fabric on top of the rock, and made a path for the water from the neighbors to go where it always has gone, into the lot, into the, and so that was the purpose, not only to save the trees, but to control runoff. That round circle on the green-brown transition is another area that we kind of sloped it so the water will run there. So we really have no net gain of erosion that runs toward the river. It's all really being channeled on both sides, in and through the lot under the rock. And that rock is exposed, and thankfully the neighbors are good with it as well, because I was kind of concerned when I put the retaining wall in if they would be upset. And thankfully they're not. They like the way we did it. And I wasn't even going to put a rain garden mix on the north side, but the neighbors said, we like the rock just the way it is. So the rock underneath, we're going to just leave that, and he's going to mow right up to that. So the edge of the retaining wall is 2 feet off the property line, and it pretty much encompasses those trees. The reason we ran the retaining wall further, or the reason I did, is so that we could contain the material all the way and still protect the trees without filling over the trees. So we did get further, and I should have known to get the permit, and so that's on me, the conditional use permit ahead of time. But I had intended to put a bridge there, and I hired an engineer, Brian Schultz, to work on that. And you at the county know that they've been working with him, we're trying to figure out a way to no rise and still put a bridge across that backwater. But as it turned out, nobody was really willing to commit engineering-wise to the 0.00 no rise. So we abandoned that, but it took Brian several months to do that. He was so busy. And when we got the house built, we had an opportunity to get the lawn. And by the way, where you see that circle around the tree, the well is toward the ridge line, toward the transition of the green and brown. You see the bottom left picture there. So we had to dig that well and bring that to the house. And all the topsoil that we took out of the house, we pushed back toward the back of the lot, so we would be pinched off to haul dump trucks past the house. So really, most of that fill was there right from the get-go once we dug the well and connected it to the house. So that was the challenge on that lot. I can assure you, though, that we raked the slope. We didn't fill the slopes. We just raked them, and we intend to have Natural Resource Company. In fact, I've hired them and signed a contract. I think you guys have that in your packet. That they're going to do. It's going to take a couple years or so to get these wildflowers to go. So I hired them to just handle that, and they're going to come every year for the next 3 years and maintain it and make sure that these things are established.
Appreciate the backstory.
Thank you. More questions? Anyone? Comment? Joe?
Joe, just real quickly, you kind of talked around the answer about, bottom line, why you didn't have that permit.
Yeah.
So, and because when we have people come in, we ask them, the bottom line is why that permit wasn't taken.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it seems that you do have the knowledge, and you've done a nice job with this project, but.
I do, and to be honest with you, when I looked at the upland portion of it, now if I was dealing with the slope, the shoreland, that would have been a red flag right away. But when I was looking at the upland portion of it, to even put the well in and dig in backfill, kind of put me in violation of that 20-foot setback already.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't have been able to hook the well up, the lot would be non-conforming and all that. So I didn't see that to be a real concern right at the get-go. And like I say, my intention was to handle all that at one time with the bridge, and that got delayed, and all of a sudden winter was here, and we wanted to button this all up and make sure that it was controlled. Okay. And so I don't have a really good explanation, you guys, why I didn't pull the permit ahead of time. But the silver lining is that I didn't object to paying $2,900 to have you guys come and do this. In fact, I'm an advocate for the environment as well as you guys are. I think you probably know that by now.
Right, and from what I heard from Nick, it looks like you've taken care of things pretty well. Also, just the tree, preserving the tree with those rocks is a plus. And did I understand there might be an additional tree added to the property as well? Is there another tree going to be?
Oh yeah, we're going to plant one maple in the upland, the brown area. And we're going to maintain that area around the tree as unmowed to get the credits that we need for the upland, the brown area.
Okay. Is that additional tree documented? Do we have that? Nick, do we?
It has to be in the upland area, but I don't think we have it on the plan there. It's going to be on the south side of the property. Within the brown area.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Nathan, you have anything for me?
Nope, I don't got anything.
That's a good answer.
Anyone else? Any questions? Do we have any correspondence for this one?
Nope.
Nothing? This is open to the public. Anyone from the public wish to address this petition? No one? Motion to close?
I move we close. Oh, sorry.
Please come up. Yep. Come to the podium here and introduce yourself, please.
Hi.
I am Denise DeGiuliani. I live at 39896 Ulster Road, and I am the adjacent home to the retaining wall. Can you hear me? There we go. So we're the home that's adjacent to the retaining wall with the majestic trees that Joe was talking about. I'm glad I came because we were wondering what all this was about. My husband and I are quite concerned about the actual health of the trees. I know that Joe went on great lengths to make sure that the longevity of the trees were met, but there's no guarantee of that, and they are very majestic, and it is part of the property and why we purchased is because of those pines. So I don't know what we can do to make sure that the longevity of the trees haven't been harmed because of the construction that was taking place and all of the fill and the rocks that were placed. So that's the only concern I have.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to make a comment? All right.
And we were equally concerned about the trees because they are beautiful. They're mature pine trees and that's why I hired that tree expert to come in and advise us as how and what to do to preserve them.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, and I think it's fair in maybe addressing the concern about those trees is that under this major shoreland alteration, there's not anything in particular that would change that outcome. And there really wouldn't have been beforehand. The building of the house was permittable. That's allowed. So this is really just to talk about the additional fill. In hearing kind of what's taken place, it seems that every consideration to try to keep those trees alive was probably taken, considering the circumstances. So appreciate the question and asking it. And just this conditional use permit really doesn't impact that at this point anymore. But thank you for asking.
Thank you, Jason. Now, there was a motion
To close public hearing,
That was me.
and a second.
I'll second. If no one
Okay,
else
We
has.
have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Any further discussion on the panel? We go to the findings of fact?
Yeah.
All righty then. Let's see here. Can the applicant sufficiently document that the alteration was done to protect water quality, improve aesthetics, control erosion, or enhance habitat? Please describe the reasons the applicant made the alteration and include documentation if available.
Mr. Chair, actually through a lot of the things discussed, but let's start by saying this is a tough lot to manage all of these different aspects, right? And you can go and second guess a million things along the process, but I do think that due consideration was taken into account for particularly the water and the drainage and runoff in this particular instance, considering the plans and the property.
Thank you, Jason. Number two, why did the applicant fail to obtain an alteration permit or comply with requirements before commencing work?
Mr. Chair, best I gathered, I mean, that is largely an oversight.
Thank you. Did the applicant obtain all other required permits and comply with other requirements? Please identify all other required permits and whether the applicant obtained the permits. Anyone?
Mr. Chair, as per the property history, they did acquire the construction site permit, the SSTS permit. They also revised the permit for the larger house. So the two other required permits were acquired appropriately.
Thank you. Number four is the alteration in a sensitive area, a shore or bluff impact zone, wetland buffer, a county biological survey site, or other documented high-value habitat.
Mr. Chair, it is within twice the setback of the water, ordinary high water mark, and that setback, but it is in the upland portion outside of the 100-year floodplain.
Thank you. Is the alteration visible from the lake or public water?
Minimal.
Minimally.
Yes. Does the alteration affect the character of the neighborhood, or will it result in a substantial detriment to neighboring properties?
Mr. Chair, in this case, the fill, minimally. I mean, there wasn't a house there previously, and this is part of that process, but the fill itself, minimal.
Thank you. Did the alteration reduce or eliminate an existing buffer between the ordinary high water level water and impervious surfaces, or create a more direct conduit for stormwater to flow into public waters? Seems to me he improved the flow of water with the conduit there. Did the alteration change or damage any of the following categories? The aesthetics of the shore as viewed from the water. We basically covered this. Character of the neighborhood or shoreline. No, didn't really affect that. Could the applicant mitigate the damage or change without removing the alteration and restoring the sites?
There really wasn't any documented damage, so there's nothing really to fix.
Right, okay. Would the minimum
Sorry,
benefit...
Mr. Chair, Jacob, what'd you say? I didn't catch that.
There wasn't any really noticeable damage or to fix that.
Thank you. Would the minimum benefits to the county appear to be far outweighed by the detriment the applicant would suffer if forced to restore the alteration?
Mr. Chair, I believe that is a no.
I agree. All righty then. At this point, I'm looking for a motion.
All right. It's a little different than my findings of fact, Mr. Chair, and those are the afters.
yeah.
So based on that, I would make a motion to recommend approval. But oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
I have a question. Under the recommendations, do we need to make a statement in regards to the other tree on the, I'm going to call it the brown area that was on the picture? I'm going to call
Would
it
we
on
add
the,
a condition to make sure that we get that tree there? Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
We can do that, can't we?
We'll just clarify it. We'll make sure that it's added. Yeah, we can add that to the conditions. So if you want to.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
The addition of the planned maple tree. So we would add that to a third condition. Okay, then I would still recommend approval with three conditions then. The financial guarantee, the native plant buffer, and then the addition of
Thank you,
the
Jason.
tree.
We'll second that.
And a second from Ken. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Well, Joe, wasn't too pleased that it was after the fact, but you did a nice job making
Yeah, no,
those
you're fair.
corrections. Nathan, enjoy your new home. It looks beautiful.
Wait a minute.
I think we need you to say that louder on the record, please.
Yeah.
The fact that the after the fact project looked good?
This is
Okay,
one.
I got it. I got it on record.
Okay. But I wasn't too pleased that it was after the fact. You have that on record too.
On record, in fairness, Joe, I would agree. After the facts are no fun, but it makes it a lot easier when things are done the right way.
Yeah.
All right, motion to approve minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, I would make I'll make a motion to recommend the minutes from the January meeting.
I would like to have a discussion on those.
Okay, Rich, go ahead.
Item B, I never verbally voted yes or no on that item. You can look at the video because I had lots of concerns about we have limited the years on other solar gardens. And so the following week, I went through 6 years of documents from our meetings, and I found two applications where we limited to 25 years. And back then we had discussion about treating solar gardens the same as gravel mining operations. We set limits there, so we were setting limits in regards to that.
Mr. Chair,
And so when.
could you just help me with which part of the minutes do you want clarified? Help me with what
It'd have
page
been
you're
the
on?
voting side.
vote.
It
right?
would be, it says unanimous, and I'm at fault in
Which
not verbalizing, and
Your name.
I would have said no, but I was thinking more about, I'm thinking, am I forgetting something here, or do we really, in the past, have we voted a limitation? And we have, and I'm always been one to be concerned about being consistent, what we do. So I didn't say one way or another, but I guess that still makes it unanimous. I'm
would
just
you-
bringing that out. I'm just bringing that out for everybody.
Vote to be counted as an abstention?
Right, that's why I guess clarification.
Can we do that?
Sure.
I would
If you
like,
watched it and you didn't hear yourself say aye, then we can count that as an abstention.
and I like, to be honest with you, I went, dug through all my boxes of, of our documents and I found them. So I thought, okay, my memory's not failing me.
True.
So-
Just to,
Not yet.
no, appreciate you mentioning that. And just so I understand this though, my perception is those have all been CUPs, not IUPs.
Doesn't matter.
So, Mr.
Well-
Chair, just for purposes of the minutes, my understanding is, let's just circle back on what we're trying to discuss right now, okay? That's the minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay, so my understanding is that Richard would like us to clarify in the record of the minutes for the Fraley interim use that he abstained.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
done.
Let's finish
If
the,
you
we'll
have
finish the
another
minutes then.
discussion item not related to the minutes, then the chair can decide when you want to discuss that.
Fair, sounds good. Thanks, Angie. Okay, I'm gonna then just recommend approval with Rich's modification.
Thank you.
Do you want a second?
Okay.
then, Rich?
I'll second it.
All right.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Abstaining because I wasn't there, and I'd like to thank the committee members for nominating me for vice chair in my absence.
You're welcome, by the way.
Well,
I wasn't a county commissioner, so got that going for me.
Mr. Chair, on the other issue, I've been spending a great deal of time as a result of the last county board meeting on the Fraley matter, coming up with a timeline and a summary on solar, and it's not quite done. I could spend 2 hours going through it with you now if you wanted, but I'm guessing you don't want that. So I'm not going to argue with Rich, but my report will show that, you know, how the history of permits have been issued and what the ordinance states. So,
will you be able to get us paper copies, or can you email us when it's finished?
absolutely. As soon as I'm going to go through it with Shelley and with our county administrator, and then it's going to be reported to the board the first meeting in March, I believe. And so once it's all wrapped up, you'll be the first to see along with the county board.
Great,
Okay?
great. And we got some discussion on recreational camping and cabins.
Yes, so in your packet, there's a one-page document, and what we're bringing forward to you is discussion on what we hear a lot of requests for, and what we know is happening, and what we get complaints for what's happening. And so typically, ordinances can be amended by applicants asking, the planning commission, the county board asking, or as a zoning office, us saying, there's a lot of questions about these things, and so we want to bring them to you to get direction. So what I don't have, and Jennifer and I and Heidi discussed this, is we don't have proposed ordinance language because I don't even know what you're thinking of the topics in general.
Yep.
So the idea tonight would be like some thumbs up, thumbs down concepts, and then we would come back sometime in the future. So we'll take this first, that, again, these are inquiries that we're seeing from the public, are people that want cabins that are accessory to rural tourism and or agriculturally oriented businesses. So if you remember, you know, rural tourism was added right after the comprehensive plan. That was a result of us wanting to allow ag-related tourism in the rural areas. And then ag-oriented businesses, that's been around since the beginning of time, and that's obviously some businesses related to some more tourism related, some feed mills. It's kind of, those are a little bit more running the gamut. So some options would be related to this would be amend the ordinance to allow resorts in the A40 zoning district. And that would be, I would say, maybe like one spectrum, kind of way off to the side. The second would be amend the ordinance to set a maximum number of lodging units before it becomes a resort. And third, and then we'll kind of talk about them all at the same time, is right now under the rural tourism part of the ordinance, it allows a property owner, an applicant, to ask for lodging. And it's in section 651O. It says lodging accessory to rural tourism shall be licensed by the county and shall meet the requirements of the lodging ordinance, basically. The challenge is there's no number with that. So what we've had people say to us is, well, can we have 10? Can we ask the planning commission for 10? Can we ask them for, we haven't had anyone ask for 100,
Yeah.
but can we have 1? Can we have 2? If you remember was it Feathered Acres, Jen?
Something like that, by Belgrade.
Yeah, the Zachman by Belgrade, the gal who has the rural tourism egg-oriented business for like schools, and then she has one lodging unit, right? So you've only had that one asked for, but when Jennifer and I and Heidi have people saying, hey, we want to do this thing, or we are doing this thing, we don't know what to bring. We've held them off in bringing these applications to you probably as long as we can. So if we don't do A or B, C is going to just come to you.
Yeah.
And then you're all going to have to kind of wing it, to be honest with you, on how much is
On a case-by-case
too
basis.
much. Yes. And that's a choice that we're giving you, is just to keep it like that. Or the other two options. So I'm going to take a breath and you guys can talk.
Would that come as a CUP for, let's say, just the lodging, or would it be the ag-oriented business with the lodging as part of that CUP, typically?
Both.
Okay.
So if the original CUP didn't ask for lodging, then they would have to come back and ask for it.
Yeah. So let me throw a hypothetical out there. Got 120 acres. I want to start an ag-oriented business. I'm going to do a horse stable kind of deal, the apple orchard, right? I want to have people come out on the weekends, and then clearly, I got a cidery thing here, so we're going to have cabins and families can come. But what is it, right? But weddings, yep, because I got a big event center as part of this thing too. So now I have 8, 10 do we care? And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Right, at what point do we care?
My opinion is the property gets rezoned, becomes commercial.
But what if it's an ag-oriented business? The majority of that acreage is
Depends how you view upon it.
I
How you look at it.
I also think that apple orchard that's an event site by St. Joseph, when they're doing their events, the neighbors have expressed significant concern over that. And we've listened to the neighbors and taken that into account when they've asked to expand their operation. Does it alter the fundamental nature of the neighborhood? Do we, if you put in 2 cabins, that's one thing. If you put in 30 cabins.
Exactly, right. What number do you care? I mean,
when we look at our CUP permits, the question is, does it alter the fundamental nature of the county or the community? So that could be the standard by which we judge things. When we're talking rural tourism, we're talking tourist cabins. This is not additional housing for workers on site.
Correct.
Which is an allowed use.
Okay. Mr. Chair, what I would be concerned about is opening it up and then have unintended consequences. That we'd get something then that we've allowed to happen, and then that becomes a standard in that. And just thinking with that, would this be affected at all by vacation home rentals? So that if you have where a vacation home rental is, and now they want to have 2 additional cabins. So at what point does it no longer, is it a cabin that's vacation home rental that actually turns into a resort?
Right. So right now you can have 2 vacation home rentals on a property, and anything over that is a resort.
Oh.
Right, Jen?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that has been an option for some people, and that's actually what we've given people for options. We haven't had anyone, I don't think, take us up on it yet, but probably shortly.
I have one working on it,
Yeah.
and they live there, They have a small cottage that's their accessory dwelling that they want to rent as a short-term rental, but they want to have more cottages to have people come out and do a rural experience and, yeah.
Well,
So,
I'm ju-
right,
Chair, and then what about then the standards, if it's gonna be overnight? You know, what do we do about the septic and then the qualifying septic?
That's lodging, though.
And,
Yeah, correct. I mean, those are things we're going to have to ask. Number of vehicles then on the property, the setback from, you know, it would have to meet those standards. And so
Yep.
we would be developing some parameters for that.
right.
Okay.
The concept is, or what we're floating is the concept. The details would be, yeah, a list of
Yeah.
what's all gonna have to happen, sewer, water, lodging, safety, all, yeah. We would come back with all that. It wouldn't be just this free-for-all thing.
Mr. Chair, actually, I mean, all good comments. Those are things that are all considerations. I think the one thing I am just taking a step back looking at this thing is I would like to create options for rural businesses. We are such an unfriendly business climate in our state, and I don't want to turn that way in our county, even more so. We are concerned where people live, and that is an important thing, but no one's going to want to live here if there's nowhere to work and nothing to keep, you know, long-term economy going. The reality is, even though in our long-term comprehensive plan, we prioritize agriculture as a long-term land use, the reality is central Minnesota is not set up to go to and compete with the acreages in Iowa and the Dakotas and Illinois when it comes to ag. So ag-oriented businesses become part of the vitality long-term of our county. And I want to make sure that we're not doing things from a ordinance perspective that's going to limit some creativity around how to keep our local economy viable. That would be my thought. So I would rather work through the tricky parts like parking and how many, as long as we're trying to create some options for folks.
So you're leaning towards a case-by-case basis?
A case-by-case basis, I do think there are some things to think through, like the number is important, and you know.
And how many might we be looking at on an annual? There can't be many.
I mean, Jen can talk about the one she's got going right now.
You mean how many applications in total? Yeah.
What do we
Well-
have
well,
now? We
once
have probably three-ish people very interested in this change.
I mean, once it's
Probably 3 or 4. And when I say, and one thing just to kind of circle back to the whole concept of zoning again, is if it's not listed, it's not allowed.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's prohibited. So like with respect to rural tourism, you have that little section that says, yeah, you all can put a number on it, but like I said, we're going to bring you 2, or what if someone brings you 200? We have no performance standards surrounding that.
Does the state give you any advice for something like this?
Let's hope not. No offense, Jacob.
County get to choose the local, we're local control in terms of zoning, and these are all local
I mean,
decisions.
obviously, if
so-
somebody wanted to put a 200-unit resort in the middle of whatever, I mean, we're going to say no. I mean,
Well,
it's
and
not going to blend into the neighborhood, is it?
you
It's,
hit on the
how is
word
it?
resort. And so that is one of the concepts that I know at first Jennifer's like, what? Why would you even suggest that? But if you think about it, here's the weird thing. And if you look down on background information, we currently allow recreational vehicle parks and campgrounds in the ag district. Now you tell me the difference between a resort with cabins and an RV park.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we thought, you know what, we're going to bring
Yeah.
this to you guys, because if we're allowing RV parks, do we want to allow?
Do people live in the RV parks, or are they renting for a week at a time?
Most of them are seasonal, but some are licensed for some transient. Yeah.
Do we have a definition for a cabin?
Well, tell me more about what you mean.
So I'm thinking we have different, so you go to a state park, and you've got a single room, couple of bunk beds. It's not plumbed. It may or may not be heated. So a very rustic experience. I've been to other areas where you're glamping and you've got the full suite, wireless access, plumbed, kitchen on site. Do we have a standard for what is a cabin as opposed to what is a small home?
It could be any of the above.
Okay.
It could be primitive, it would be, if there's some food, beverage, and lodging rules that kick in there. If it's primitive and there's no sewer and water, then they have to have bathrooms and shower houses and,
Yep.
but 100%, they could, I mean, these cabins, it could be $1 million structure
Yeah.
that has 5 bedrooms. Like, I'm not gonna, it's stuff that you see out there, you know?
And to Mr. Chair, to Jason's point, from a lodging perspective, would you be better off looking at the number of people that are staying at the property? So like the number of occupants, or is it the amount of units?
Right.
So my thought regarding this is we don't know what we're seeing. So we don't know what the scale of the problem is. I don't see a problem with you punting to us and letting us see what the nature of the game is.
Yeah.
And if we need to make a change to the ordinance because things are getting funky, we then at that time go, oh, why are we seeing 7,000 unit applications?
Yeah,
So,
I actually appreciate that, Jace. I kind of agree with you. It's we can speculate, but until we see how it goes into practice, that's kind of what the purpose of the Planning Commission is to try to help plan for the future. And one of the best ways to do it is to have actual live case studies.
part of our job.
Yeah, and I don't think any of the ones that we've talked to, these 3 to 5, I mean, none of them are over maybe a handful of what they'd want. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, and so then when does it become a resort? At what point?
That's what we're asking.
That, okay, okay.
We're asking you that. The ordinance doesn't say that. The ordinance says that if you allow accessory lodging to rural tourism, it's never a resort. It never becomes a resort as long as they're operating rural tourism. Whatever that thing is, if it's apples, if it's cheese, if it's cows that the kids can feed.
So, Mr. Chair, what would be the problem of qualifying it as a resort?
I don't personally think that there would be a problem. I mean, that's what we've talked through. It would be actually maybe, just think of it as a dual use, right? So you got your rural tourism thing happening, and then, so they come to you with a rural tourism CUP and a resort CUP.
Well,
that kind of thing.
Mr. Chair, well, the resort, what is the draw? The draw is usually a body of water.
Not so much anymore. I mean,
necessarily.
yes.
Okay, and so
Yeah.
that what I'm saying is that now you've got another, all you're looking at is a different draw other than what our mindset is
Yep.
is a body of water. So then does it not become a resort?
Well, and maybe it could be as simple as if our resorts are allowed within ag zoned districts, any more than 2, because 2 today is allowed under a vacation home rental. If you go north of 2, a resort could be allowed, and then would the number of units be determined by the Planning Commission and the CUP, or
I think that we'd have to do some research and see what other counties do for density. Well, for example, RV parks is one RV per 4,000 square feet. That's the density. That's a lot. of
it's a lot.
RVs.
And
Now, I don't know what options we could bring to you. Density of cabins could be one. Density of people. I think someone said that. I hadn't thought of that. We'd have to come back to you and say, hey, if you're thinking kind of want to allow, maybe have a different standard, right? we'd have to do some research and come back with some ideas on that.
And one consideration too, if resorts become their own standalone use in the ag districts, then somebody could propose a resort without the rural tourism component.
Right.
Which would be fine if that's where you go.
And Jason, to your point, you know, a person with raising horses, you know, they could have a bunch of bunk houses and run a camp.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly, yeah.
Which would be, you know, a use that could be desirable. Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Chair, back to Jason's original point, do we have to make any changes to bring some of these applicants or potential applicants forward?
No, you don't have to change anything, but just understand that the applications that will come to you, we're not going to have those answers for you because we haven't answered them in the ordinance. So, and that's a choice. If, like Jason Wienerman said, like, well, let's just throw it at us, let's see, and then maybe we'll figure it out later. I mean, that's
I think
that's
we're
okay.
all good with that. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think Shelley's here, so as your department head, I think asking her to give direction, saying to applicants, so you've got a planning commission, be reasonable.
And build your case.
You know,
Help us.
it's 7 folks who are going to make a decision. Be reasonable. And that will, reasonableness is a spectrum.
It goes a long ways.
So,
It's,
Mr. Chair, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. To that point, I think we can ask applicants to be reasonable, but they're going to have to look at their circumstances. And just as you were talking about a citery in one case, we know we have farm, you know, situations. I'm just going to throw out Fairhaven Farms, for example. They do dinners. They do a bunch of other things. Would they want to have an experience where someone, now they build a couple of cabins and do something? Possibly. Wedding venues, wedding barns, those are something. Are they going to build a cabin or have a couple of places for the wedding parties to stay and take their pictures and do an event or a resort, you know, things along. I can see that happening. Reasonable is fine, and I think we try to express to people, understand your environment, understand what your circumstances are. Again, a heavily populated neighborhood is a different answer than, you know, next to an amenity that there is no one at. So trying to be reasonable is important. People have their dreams, though. And so, again, people are going to bring forward their dream, their thought, their big picture. There are certain standards that will could come into play for lodging, et cetera. And then, you know, if it becomes a resort and you get so many units, then it could be an EAW, you know, who knows. But I think it's important to understand that it's going to be a range at first, but we do try to let people know and be reasonable up front. But reasonable to us or you and me is different than reasonable to somebody with a dream.
Being reasonable is like common sense.
Yeah.
Well, what is it?
Depends on the person.
Yep.
and I would just, I mean, you were talking about wedding venues. The key here is it's a rural tourism and ag-oriented businesses. We're not running a wedding resort. We're running a rural tourism business that services weddings. So
And
they
I
need
think
to make sure
I
they're
think that's
defining
that,
it.
you know, how do you help define it? How do you help them see
Exactly.
what that meaning is?
Yep.
And that could be important. So that'll be part of the staff conversations as we move forward, but I think it will be important. And you might get some reasonable people up front also looking at it from you know, we can only afford to do X this time. There may be some financial constraints. And then people expand over time, which is always a good thing. Come back, make an amendment. Oh, yeah, that works. No, we've had no complaints. Oh, we've had a lot of complaints. Depends on where you are. So I think that might be the other part of this too.
So Jason Wiederman, were you saying, because I kind of missed a part of that concept, was yes, wedding barn. So wedding barns are rural tourism. So are you okay with lodging associated with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a semantic issue, but it sort of depends. What you're doing is rural tourism or an ag-oriented business.
Yeah, okay.
That's your focus.
Yep.
The wedding
Yeah.
is how you're achieving that objective.
Yes.
So
Right,
it's.
okay.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
we
if
kind
somebody-
of thought through that too, because, like Jen and Heidi and I were kind of, you brainstorm because everything's gonna, the best intentions, right?
Okay.
So let's say, yep, wedding barns, your focus, that's how you got rural tourism. You build 5 cabins, and then what? Are we gonna make them have weddings? What if they all of a sudden just start renting out the cabins? So that's my biggest concern about not calling it a resort as a dual use. But again, has it happened yet?
Right.
No. Will it? Absolutely, but it might take 10 years.
Not that we're aware of. I'm going to always throw
Not
that
that we're
in.
aware of.
Yes.
Yeah.
It could be happening. I mean, hip camps were happening and we didn't know it.
We're talking about that next.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
segue.
Yep.
Okay.
So just to confirm, we're, like the people that we're working with, we're not going to hold them back anymore. We're going to say, this is what the ordinance says for rural tourism, for ag-oriented business. Be reasonable. Here's what the comp plan says, and then they're going to probably come to you.
Mr. Chair, just as far as activities that are generated around that rural tourism, I don't know how many of you were here on the night we went past 1 o'clock on the shooting range. Okay.
I was not.
Again, there are things that are not conducive to a neighborhood, and that's in our ordinance as well, correct? Because you have lighting, you have noise. Putting a reception hall, wedding venue, where you maybe take out 2 cabins. Now you're going to put it on a shoreline, but you're in a residential area, but now you're bringing every weekend, that type of traffic. We got to make sure that it's conducive to the neighborhood.
Exactly. That's why I made that point about blending in as one of our components and when we discuss the findings of fact. Is it going to blend into the neighborhood, or is it going to stand out? And is it going to fit or not? And those are the questions we're going to be faced with.
We're going to see wacky stuff.
I'm here for it.
I mean, literally, I'm like,
Jacob's down.
last week I was like watching the TV news, and there was a place where you could do goat yoga.
I've done that.
So
Oh,
if
for
somebody
sure.
has a goat yoga retreat,
Yeah.
Yep. It's a thing.
great.
Yeah.
Let us have
You
the
know the
fun.
next time I come.
Okay.
Let's get a
Come with
team
me.
building going.
There you go.
So, Mr. Chair, I think we're good on number 1. I promise number 2 and 3 will be easier.
Oh, really?
Yep. So Shelley kind of made the segue into number 2 is, again, we're seeing this. They're not asking, they're just doing. Campsites that are limited in time or number of sites. So there's these different websites out here called like Hip Camp, Harvest Host, obviously Airbnb and VRBO you're familiar with, Farm Stay. There's these things where like you're driving down I-90 in southern Minnesota and you're getting tired, you're going to go on this app and you're going to say, oh, this guy lets me put my tent, put my little tent up and spend the night. That's what we have going on, and go back to the if not listed, prohibited. Okay? So the concept that we're floating to you would be either we're going to say you can't do that anymore, because if you have over 2, you're a resort. Well, no, I'm sorry. If you have over 2, you're an RV park. And that would be ridiculous in most of these situations. Or we amend the ordinance to allow a new thing, which I would call maybe recreational camping area limited. We would create new definition, we would create new standards, we'd allow it only in the egg down to R5, and you'd have to have 10 acres. The number of campsites would be capped at 4, because otherwise you get into food, beverage, and lodging licenses, and then that's a whole crazy thing. But there would be no limit in the number of times a year that they could do this. And then secondary question, I think that's kind of cool, let's talk about what that could look like. It would be, then do you want to limit like sewer and water and electricity and all those things? So that's the other thing.
Mr. Chair, I think that is something that I would look at making a permittable item so that you can get some control on it. Otherwise, to your point, you're saying no to everything, and then trying to get in the enforcement side. I mean, it's just a nonstop game. And this allows you to actually control and keep it from getting out of control. So that'd be my thought.
It gives us some teeth. What about the water, sewer, electricity stuff? That's,
Come with a recommendation and let's kick it around.
Sure.
Would be my thought.
Yeah, you all can think about it between now and then.
Mr. Chair, I think the concept's great.
Yeah.
But
I like it.
yeah.
Sure.
Of course, you got the sanitation concern.
Yep.
I'm a little concerned about the R10s and the R5s. So the residential districts.
You're saying that
there's
it should be in
10
there or
acre,
not?
There's the 10-acre minimum.
I know, but I'm concerned that by opening an R10 or an R5, and we've seen a lot of 10s open up around the cities, around St. Cloud. I'm concerned by opening that, we're sort of diluting the residential use.
Oh, sorry, I may be misheard this. I was thinking, we could maybe make it egg. Didn't you say it had to be egg?
It's listed here, parcels must be zone A160, A80, A40, T20, R10 or R5, and 10 acres or more. I'm concerned about opening the residential zone to that area.
And I can tell you.
The A's and the T's.
Sure.
Yep, makes sense.
I can tell you why we proposed it. It's what I have highlighted. So right now, recreational camping areas and RV parks are allowed down to the R5 district. So that's the only reason we picked that. We thought, well, if we're going to allow a 100-unit RV park in an R5, why wouldn't we allow a 4? Was kind of the concept, but I'm not disagreeing or arguing with you, but that's why we chose it. So, and you don't have to decide that tonight either.
And of course, we would be in townships. We would not be in cities. So, I mean, cities would control that if it was near in the town. So, I mean, it would be outside the town, city limits.
Okay, good one.
So come back with some standards, all right?
Yeah.
And then the last, and I think probably shouldn't be super controversial, but we've had some requests for temporary labor camps over the years, most recently with Highway 23 west of Richmond. People from all these companies need somewhere to stay, and they put their RVs somewhere, and we fight it. And fight it / allow it till they go away. And so it's happened with Highway 23, it happened with CapEx line. Yeah, MinCan 15, 20 years ago. So that's the other thought, right? Do you want to allow that? And it would be obviously limited in time. They would have to follow certain FBL standards for sewer and water and all the things.
Back to point, that's another one. I would figure out a way to permit it so that it can be controlled. Otherwise, it's just an ongoing battle as you're experiencing. And do it the right way.
There's a need for it.
There's a need for it. Did any of you guys ever go out to Williston years ago? Okay, that's the other side of what we want to prevent.
Yeah.
Do it the right way. Okay, does that help?
Yeah. That's great. Thank you all for that discussion. It's been swimming around in our brains for a few months, and so it's good to kind of talk it out, and then we'll come back sometime. I'm not sure when.
Nice.
Okay? Thank you all.
Great discussion. Mr. Chair, selfishly, I got basketball practice in 7 minutes. I'm going to be late for already. So is there anything else?
Out of the sheriff's office, so.
Okay. All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all.
I don't think you need any practice.
It's okay.
Oh, my.
Hey,